How do you see the participation of the Chinese delegation this time? How much energy, information, and updates are they bringing?
So we're very pleased to have Premier Li Tian join us in Davos this year and really deliver a message, message about global cooperation and a message about Chinese growth. And within that message also, the continuation of a world where we cooperate on supply chain, on technology, on making the planet more sustainable. So his message was very well received by the participants here in Davos.
Right. He gave a lot of numbers, for example, about China's green development. In fact, I've been talking to people around, they say, oh, this is the first time they hear about this. So we see, even though the world is very globalized, but recently there is some gap of information, especially about China. You've been working in China for a couple of years. You have friends in China, in many different parts of the country. How do you see this interesting phenomenon?
At the moment, we have current crises. We have conflicts in different parts of the world with a horrible situation for populations. And we also have long-term systemic issues, like the climate crisis, right? And so for both of these, it's important to have a platform such as Davos, where business leaders, government leaders, academic experts, but also young people, artists, really the whole fabric of society can come together, make their voices heard, and sometimes we have different opinions, but they can make their voices heard. And that's really what the World Economic Forum and what Davos is about, is a place for dialogue.
For long, Davos has been accused by those who do not support your organization and the events as not touching the ground, not really having an impact on the real people on the streets. This year, how do you see the discussions are actually making that connection?
Well, look, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, right? We want a healthy, sustainable planet, and we want growth and prosperity for our population. We believe in business as a force for good, right? Because business has the muscle to implement some of the changes we need. So when it comes to climate, for example, we need to continue investing in technologies that will help us transition from an energy system that we currently have to an energy system that's more sustainable through, of course, renewables, through carbon capture technologies, and so on and so forth. That requires capital and investment, and for that, we need to continue to have growth. And that was also part of Premier Li Tian's message.
I know you have been working within your organization on the technology part and try to make technology's integration into the system and provide service to all the participants of the forum. So how have you been digesting all these latest trends? I mean, it's dramatic amount of information and all the development, and therefore select the most important and most viable to your work.
We have a program which we call the Technology Pioneers. That program is more than 25 years old. When we started to bring young entrepreneurs, at that time mainly from Silicon Valley, but today they come from all over the world, and integrate them into our ecosystem and into our program, so that our other participants can get a good sense of what the latest innovations are. Now this year in Davos, of course, generative AI is one of the key thematics of this year's annual meeting. We've seen an acceleration in the development of this technology just in the past 12 months. But we are really just at the beginning. So we have here in Davos really all the top experts on generative AI. Sam Altman, founder of OpenAI, Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, Li Kai-fu, a venture capital investor, and so on and so forth.
As you know, for example, Sam Altman, during an open discussion, at the end of his talk, he suggested, well, ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of strange things likely to happen in the future. Of course, he didn't specify. What he's trying to say is technologies are moving so fast, it's very hard to interpret exactly what it means for everybody. So how is the forum trying to help all of us, especially for the business leaders and also political leaders, to digest the nature of technologies with the platform you establish and the sessions you're trying to design?
Yeah, so when it comes to generative AI, right, there's sort of three things we need to think about, and this is how we've built the program around this.
Tell me more.
The first one is, how do we build sort of safe and efficient AI systems? Because we must remember, I mean, this is fundamental research. This is complicated technology. So how do we build it in a way which is safe and that has to do with transparency on certain components. It has to do with proper red teaming, and there's a whole series of recommendations which we published in a paper last June called the Procedural Recommendations for Responsible AI. The second one is, how do we think about governance, right? And here it's not the role of the forum or its members to regulate, but what we can do is to figure out what are the right questions that we need to ask. The third point is what are the industrial applications? And here it's, as I said, it's really, we're at the beginning. We've built kind of the base layer, and now there'll be a series of applications that we build on top. I think the most interesting question is really, what are the deep implications for the economy and society in the long term? And that's something we don't really know yet.
We see people discuss about AI all over the world these days, sometimes with very little literacy about exactly what AI is and what at this stage is this latest development. How do you see, when you're working on the technology part and bringing all these pioneers together, a disconnect in the discussion vis-a-vis the literacy, the facts, and the information?
Yeah. So I think with any new technology, right, there's always people that are going to move faster than others. And it's important, and this is why the forum is sort of a place that this discussion can happen. It's important indeed, as you say, that people don't get left behind, right? So how do you make sure that there's a certain amount of literacy that gets built up? And here I'd point also to some of the work we're doing in the skills space. So jobs. How do we think of the jobs of tomorrow, right? And what are the skills that are going to be needed? So we have some work that we're doing in that space, because indeed, whenever technology comes, on the one hand, we need to understand the implications, but also how do we make sure that there's literacy that goes throughout society?
The summer Davos is coming up later in the year. So how do you see this technology development and discussions about that will be further enhanced over there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, this is not a topic that is just a trend today and then we will forget about it. As I said, we've built now these large language models, which, if you think about back in the 90s when the World Wide Web was built, right, this is an analogy. So now you have a kind of an infrastructure, kind of a highway, and it's only now that we're going to start to build the applications on top of it, right? So back then it was e-commerce and search and so on, and then social media and et cetera, and then services, and then we will find out what some of the applications are. I think in certain industries, like pharmaceuticals, other industries, they are already quite far down the line in understanding what the applications of these technologies are, for example, in the discovery of new proteins and things like that. So, certainly some industries have already gone quite far, but there's still a lot to be learned and a lot to do.
But now, as we all say, it's a fractured world. So what kind of challenges and opportunities does it mean for the forum, reflected this year at the forum?
Well, you know, on the one hand, you could say it's a fractured world, and that's true. There are tensions between, let's say, different areas and different ways of looking at the world. But what we see is that a lot of people come here still and want to have their voices heard. So we had Premier Tian of China, we had the President of Ukraine, we had President of France, Macron, we had the new President of Argentina who delivered a message how he intends to sort of bring his country back from some difficult years. And so, yes, there are tensions in the world, but at the same time, we provide a platform for all the voices to be heard, and then out of that comes cooperation, collaboration, and sometimes we incubate an interesting initiative.
Final question. I see you move from one department or areas of the work of the forum to another, and then to another. It seems that you've been doing technology job, you've been going to regional place offices of the World Economic Forum, such as in Beijing. You also have been working on other projects related to the forum. How have you learned, throughout this process? What does that mean to you as a member, as an important member of the forum, about the sophistication of this platform?
In the management team, there's 6 of us, and we each have responsibility for different areas of the forum, and occasionally we, depending on how things evolve, we rotate some of these responsibilities, and it provides personal growth, of course, but it also provides sometimes the opportunity to bring new ideas to a specific area. So this is something that is quite common within our organization, not just at the leadership level, but in other levels as well.